Do you have a pen on you?
Marker, that's it.
Good.
David Cross here too. You should probably recognize him. Welcome to the 10th Annual State of the City Address. Thank you for joining us. I'm honored to have the opportunity to be here to welcome all of you and to introduce our mayor, who I will mention was recently named Best West Virginia Mayor of 2018 by West Virginia Living Magazine. In addition to members of Wheeling City Council who are with us today, we also have our city manager, our police and fire chiefs, and several other elected officials and former elected officials I'd like to recognize. From the Board of Education, we have David Croft, Molly Adderholt, and Chris Carter. And we have former City Councilman Vern Seals, Barry Crow, Cliff Sager, and former Mayor Nick Sparshane. So thank you for everything you have done and continue to do for our community. Next, I would like to introduce Bishop Ralph Duncan, who will lead today's invocation.
Five years ago, the Impact Coalition, which is part of YSS, invited the faith community to be involved in drug prevention. For the last 4 years, we've had a Day of Hope or a Weekend of Hope, the third weekend in September. Last September, we were inviting people to surround the city of Wheeling in prayer. I would invite you to do the same. We're trying to end the drug crisis, trying to end addiction, and trying to give people the gift of hope. Your prayers can help us do that. So today, let us pray. Lord God, Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for the city of Wheeling. And for this city, we pray for our mayor, our city council, for all those who are employed by the city, all the commissions and all the boards that work to make this city as good or better than it can be. We give you thanks for the work of the past. Look forward to the future. And we pray for the city's citizens of Wheeling to be those open to change, to open to newness, for the things that can help us and make our life here better. For all these things and for whatever else you see that we need, we ask in your name. And the people of God say together, Amen.
Thank you, Bishop Duncan. Now, if you will all rise for the presentation of our colors by the Wheeling Police and Fire Honor Guard, and we will follow with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Arms. Left. Face. Forward. March.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the 53rd Mayor of Wheeling, Glenn Elliott.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, and please be seated. Good afternoon, and welcome to the 10th Annual State of the City Address here in the city of Wheeling. This is now my third opportunity to speak to you at this event, and each year it remains a distinct honor and privilege to do so. Let me begin by thanking some of the people who helped make this event possible. Thank you to the City of Wheeling Police and Fire Honor Guard for presenting our national and state flags to stand alongside our new city flag. Thank you, Bishop Ralph Duncan, for that gracious invocation. To my fellow city council members, Vice Mayor Chad Thalman, who it is his birthday today, by the way, and councilors Ken Eimer, Melinda Kozlik, Wendy Scatterday, Ty Thorngate, and Dave Palmer. It remains my honor to serve the citizens of Wheeling with you. Let me also recognize City Manager Robert Herron, as well as the following department heads who keep our city running each and every day. City Clerk B.J. Delbert, Finance Director Seth McIntyre, Public Works Director Rusty Jebbia, Economic Development Director Nancy Prager, Police Chief Sean Schwartfager, Fire Chief Larry Helms, Human Resources Director Tesha Haymaker, Parks and Recreation Director Jesse Mestrovic, City Solicitor Rose Humoy-Warmouth, and all of the city staff members who are here today, including Michelle Rajanis, who's our city's new marketing and community relations specialist. And I'd also like to recognize 5 officers here of the Wheeling Police Department who are with us today. One of them is the 2008 Officer of the Year, Kevin Kusa. The 4 others, Ryan Moore, Ryan Farrell, John McKenzie, and Ben Young, were the runners-up for that. So congratulations to all of them. And to those elected officials in attendance, thank you for joining us today. As we gather here in this, the 250th anniversary of the year of our founding, I'd like to begin by looking back. We've done this in past years, and I think not looking back for the sake of nostalgia necessarily, but looking back to foster a better understanding of how we got to where we are today. Cities do not exist independently of their histories. More often than not, our current hopes and dreams stand in no small part on the shoulders of those decisions made in decades past. 2 years ago, I bestowed the city's first Gateway Award on former Mayor Jack Lippert for his efforts in the 1990s to keep Wheeling moving forward as the regional economy continued to contract. Last year, I honored former councilman and longtime Planning Commission member Barry Crow for his years of service to our community. Well, today it's my privilege to name as the 3rd recipient of the Gateway Award someone whose service to and investment in the city spans decades, including 8 years as mayor. If you haven't figured out by now, I'm of course talking about former Mayor Nick Sparshane. Thank you. Nick is one of the original founders of Main Street Bank and the Senior Vice President of USI Insurance Services. His family business, Undo's, is the prime sponsor for the Upper Ohio Valley Italian Festival. Today, Nick serves as director on 5 local organizations, and along with his wife, Patty, his wife of 40 years, mind you, he remains deeply involved in our community. But I would like to focus today on the legacy left by Mayor Nick Sparshane and the 2 city councils he served with from 2000 to 2008. It was, after all, during this time that the former Wheeling Stamping Building became the global operations center for ORIC, an international law firm. Mayor Sparshane worked hard to pitch Wheeling to ORIC officials, including taking a personal trip to San Francisco headquarters to meet with them. As a result of these efforts, there are now roughly 400 employees working in what had become an abandoned factory. But it doesn't stop there. Bringing ORIC to Wheeling Stamping Building helped catalyze the redevelopment of Celeron Plaza, including the Staley Communications Building and the Wagner Building. Working closely with City Council and with RED, Mayor Sparshane helped facilitate the redevelopment of the Stone and Thomas Building in downtown Wheeling, which had become vacant at that time. Today, the Stone Center is nearly fully occupied, with the primary tenant, Williams Lee, following ORIC and bringing hundreds of jobs to the city of Wheeling. During Nick's tenure, the city made important investments in its future. Major renovations were made to the then Wheeling Civic Center. The city worked with various partners, including the Wheeling Convention and Visitors Bureau, to save the Capitol Theater. However you may try, it's difficult to imagine what Wheeling might look like today without the efforts of Mayor Sparshane and the men and women who serve with him on City Council. And that group included Mike Now, Babe Schmidt, the late Herc Henry, the late Gloria Delbrug, Cliff Slager, Vern Seal, and Barry Crow. And as I learned this morning, Patty deserves some credit because I understand she made every council meeting during his 8 years as mayor. Are you listening, Cassandra? All right. And so at this time, I would like to ask Mayor Sparshane and any of his fellow council members who are with us today to please stand. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating Mayor Nick Sparshane, the 2019 recipient of the City of Wheeling Gateway Award, and those who served with him. Thank you. We've come a long way since our founding in 1769, and I hope that all residents will take part in the various celebrations and activities planned by our Wheeling 250 committee this year. I'd like to thank Chairman Jay Fry and his fellow Wheeling 250 members for their many hours spent planning a wonderful assortment of activities planned for this year, so please pay attention and stay tuned. Wheeling250.net is a site where you can go check it all out. Let us now try to take stock of what is the true state of the city in 2019. Let us address what we're doing well and where there is need for improvement. And let us pay tribute to some of the special members of the Wheeling community who have made themselves part of the solution through their contributions. I will start by focusing explicitly on the heart and soul of Wheeling, and that's our neighborhoods. Neighborhoods are more than just geography. Our neighborhoods can help define our own sense of identity. They're the backdrops for our respective life stories. They're the lens through which we often view the rest of our city. And there is no formula for a successful city that does not include healthy and connected neighborhoods. We are very lucky to have many proud and thriving neighborhoods here in the city of Wheeling, but even some of the healthiest have shown their age. Properties are not always being uniformly maintained. Many of our streets and the sewers that underlie them absolutely demand our attention. Some neighborhoods have seen their connectivity compromised. While there are no simple solutions to any of these issues, we recognize that the city needs to take a proactive stance. And to this end, let me share a few of the initiatives that we are working on as your City Council. Last year, we rolled out the Wheeling 311 tool on the new city website at wheelingwv.gov. It permits residents to request non-emergency services online through a user-friendly system that collects and then forwards complaints and photos to the appropriate city staff. It can be used for a lot of things, including building code violations, property maintenance complaints, road maintenance needs, issues with trash, with leaves, with dumping, and so on. Once a request is made through Wheeling 301, it can be tracked to ensure that the issue is addressed in a timely manner. While the city maintains an active social media presence, we strongly encourage everyone to take advantage of Wheeling 311 instead when requesting these sorts of non-emergency services. We've also sought to streamline our enforcement of the city's property maintenance codes. A frequent complaint we hear is that our enforcement process takes too long and leads to too many repeat offenders. To address these issues, Councilman Dave Palmer has been working with city staff to implement a system of expedited enforcement that provides property owners with incentives for early compliance. The goal of this initiative is to lead property owners towards compliance, not to issue fines, and we look forward to working towards this goal. When it comes to our city streets, City Council has heard all the complaints loud and clear. Last fall, we approved nearly $1 million for 44 paving projects throughout the city, the largest one-time paving contract in our history. Many of these projects have already commenced, but due to weather conditions, some will not be completed until the spring. But lest there be any doubt about it, we will be revisiting the state of our streets going into our 2020 budgeting process. Likewise, we're moving forward with plans to improve our underground infrastructure. City Council has approved a multi-year sewer improvement plan that will span many Wheeling neighborhoods. Neighborhoods cannot grow and thrive in the 21st century with sewer systems in some cases dating to the 19th. One more way we can promote healthy neighborhoods is to make sure that they include parks and playgrounds that are inviting and well-maintained. As promised, this City Council has made its commitments to improving our neighborhood playgrounds unambiguous. In the past 2 years, we've dedicated nearly $400,000 to renovating 11 of the city's 22 neighborhood playgrounds, and there are more improvements planned for this year on playgrounds in Fulton, in Pleasanton, and on North 24th Street in Warwood. New partnerships have also expanded our reach when it comes to recreation. Consider the recent agreement among the Ohio County Board of Education, the City of Wheeling, and the Woodsdale PTO Playground Committee, of which one of today's honorees, Kathleen Wack, is a proud member. Working with Principal Ashley Minch and other members of the PTO Playground Committee, Kathleen helped raise more than $225,000 for a spectacular new playground installation at Woodsdale Elementary School. She then helped arrange for a shared use agreement between the Board of Education and the city by which the playground could function as a city park during non-school hours. Last year, Governor Justice awarded the PTO Playground Committee a commendation for volunteer services, and it was well-deserved. But for Kathleen, this is not about being recognized, it's about children's health and access to recreation. And so to Kathleen, who's joined today by her husband Josh and their 3 children, thank you for helping to improve the quality of life in our community. Thank you. It's not just in Woodsdale where we have seen community volunteerism make a difference. Since 2016, Grow Warwood Pride has been enlisting the help of volunteers to bring about positive change in the city's Warwood neighborhood through impactful community projects. And at the center of Grow Word of Pride are my two honorees today, and that's Matt Rafa and Julie Davis. Grow Word of Pride was a result of their recognizing a hunger by their neighbors to be part of the solution in Warwood. And since its founding 3 years ago, this organization has spurred volunteer efforts to paint the fence around Garden Park, to clean the Veterans Memorial located therein, to organize school supply drives for local teachers, to engage in community cleanup days, and much more. Julie and Matt were also behind efforts to establish the Warwood Farmers Market and now the annual Trunk or Treat event. These collective efforts have made Warwood a better neighborhood, and by extension, Wheeling a better city. And for that, please join me in thanking Julie Davis and Matt Rafa of Grow Word of Pride. As we close out our focus on neighborhoods today, let's remember that there are those living amongst us who, through one reason or another, have found themselves without a home to live in. There's no one single cause of homelessness, nor is there any simple remedy, but we want the city to be at least part of the solution. And so today I'd like to announce a new partnership between the city and the Greater Wheeling Coalition for the Homeless, which is led by Executive Director Lisa Badia. While the details are still being finalized, this partnership will allow the city to employ a small number of Homeless Coalition clients. Each such prospective employee would be screened by Ms. Badia's staff and recommended for positions suitable to his or her actual skill set. And the goal here is to help people who are otherwise unemployable prove their worth and build their resumes. Stay tuned for more details of this program as we move forward. Each year at this address, through the Community Spirit Award, the city recognizes one local citizen whose contributions have embodied civic engagement and who's helped bring pride to our community through service and generosity and a general love of Wheeling. Today is my honor to bestow that recognition on someone who is an absolute force for positive change here in the city of Wheeling. And I'm referring to the late Robert Scatterday, known to many of us by his nickname, Scat. Throughout his life, Scat was serving causes beyond himself. For 37 years, he served the country in the U.S. Air Force, and he logged more than 4,000 hours on 136 combat missions during the Vietnam War. But it's for his service on behalf of the community of Wheeling that I would like to focus today. If you look closely, you'll find Scat's fingerprints all around us. We are fortunate as a community to have a rich network of walking and biking trails. Well, nobody played a bigger role in developing these trails than did Scat. As a former manager of the project Rails to Trails, he and the late Dr. Ben Stout were tireless advocates for expanding and enhancing our city's recreational outlets. Scat also served as a longtime race director for the annual Ogden newspaper's Half Marathon Classic. He served his community in so many other ways on so many various boards that it's too much to mention today. But it's his service on one cold February day, it's now been 11 years ago, that I would like to highlight in my remarks. While driving west on Interstate 70 near the Highlands, Scat saw a man who was lying motionless on the highway. He immediately pulled over, slammed his car in reverse, and sped back to where the man was located. He quickly realized that there was no way to stop traffic in time to save this man's life, and so he stepped onto the road and dragged the man by his belt and jacket off the highway, putting his own life at risk as tractor trailers were struggling to slow down. Scat's Good Samaritan Act made quite the impression on another stalwart of Wheeling who left us very recently, the incomparable Ann Thomas. Ann wrote a very beautiful letter to her friend, and I'm proud to share a brief excerpt of it today. Dear Scat, your selflessness saved a life that God had given to this person. My prayers go out to both of you. I just wanted you to know how I feel. It's good to know you as a friend, so very good to know you as a friend and friendship, Ann Thomas. I think the same can be said by us in this community as well. It's been very good to know Robert Scatterday as our friend. And to his son Chuck and daughter-in-law Tara, and to his daughter Wendy, who brings her father's sense of service with her to City Council each and every day, I say thank you for sharing Scat with us. Please join me in recognizing them today in receipt of this year's Community Spirit Award on behalf of Robert Scatterday. Thank you. Okay, let's now consider some familiar areas of focus for this City Council. I'm going to start with downtown economic development. Our goal here is somewhat ambitious. We want to restore downtown status as a destination unto itself. As I said here last year, the question for downtown Wheeling is no longer if this is going to happen, but when. We must be willing to fill those missing pieces needed for downtown to be a place where people can live, work, and play. The private sector has already taken note of the development opportunities that are available, and many of our historic properties are under new ownerships with very ambitious goals. The city must do its part and make investments in infrastructure necessary for development while continuing to use partnerships to catalyze more private sector investment in downtown. One of those investments is in our downtown streetscape. For several years now, the city has been collaborating with the Division of Highways on a complete facelift to the streets and sidewalks spanning our downtown core. Most of the streets included in this project are state-owned, and as a result, it's the state, not the city, that will be bearing the cost of their renovation. When complete, the project will be a downtown that is far more aesthetically pleasing, far more pedestrian-friendly, and far more cohesive in look and feel throughout. We've also been working very hard to expand the menu of events that are available for residents and visitors at West Banco Arena. In less than 1 month from today, arena football will be making its return to the friendly city as the West Virginia Rough Riders kick off their 2019 season. Joining the Wheeling Nailers, the Rough Riders will give the city a second professional sports franchise to go along with the Symphony, a world-class waterfront feature, and the Ogilvy Park system. I can't think of any city of 27,000 or fewer people that can boast all those big city features. And just next week, the Mountain East Conference men's and women's basketball tournament will tip off at West Banco Arena. For the first time, the conference tournament is actually relocating here from its longtime host city of Charleston. There are a lot of people who deserve credit for working to make this happen. I'm going to start with MEC Commissioner Reed Amos, who is with us today. I'm not sure where you're sitting, but I'd like everyone in the city to give a warm welcome to Commissioner Amos actually for working with us to make this happen. Thank you, Reed. When we first learned in 2017 that the MEC was open to relocation, we put together a team of city staff and local stakeholders to help prepare our bid. But one of those local stakeholders really rose to the occasion and helped make the MEC in Wheeling possible. And that's my next honoree, Jim Pennington of the Health Plan. In our first meeting several years ago, Jim made very clear to me that he saw his company's move to Wheeling not only as a corporate relocation, but also as a charge to be part of our revitalization. And whether that has meant partnering with Ogden newspapers to expand the Half Marathon Classic into a full wellness weekend, or partnering with the city to sponsor the bike share program announced just yesterday, Jim has delivered time and time again. And so it should surprise no one that the health plan came through as a lead sponsor for the MEC tournament here in Wheeling. We're very fortunate to have members of our business community who are committed to local economic development. And so please join me in thanking Jim Pennington for keeping his promise to have the health plan be part of the solution in downtown Wheeling. Thanks, Jim. And while we're on the subject of basketball tournaments relocating to West Bank Arena, I'd be remiss if I did not mention the efforts of another of today's honorees, Dr. Gregory Merrick. In his day job, Dr. Merrick is a world-renowned urologic oncologist. 12 years ago, though, he came up with the idea to combine his passion for men's health with his passion for basketball. And the result was the Cancer Research Basketball Classic, a national invitational high school basketball tournament televised on ESPN. For its first 11 years, the CRC tournament took place on Wheeling Jesuit University campus. But with concerns about outgrowing that venue, Dr. Merrick approached us early last year to discuss bringing the CRC downtown, and we were more than happy to oblige. Those who saw the CRC live at West Bank Arena or on ESPN last month witnessed 7 of the top 13 high school basketball teams in the nation. What a wonderful reflection that was for our city. But for Dr. Merrick, this tournament is ultimately about educating men on the simple steps they can take through preventative health care to extend their own lives. For that lesson, and for his passionate work to develop and grow the CRC into a world-class basketball showcase, please join me in thanking Dr. Merrick today. Thank you. The more missing pieces we can fill in downtown Wheeling, the sooner we can achieve that coveted destination status. We've worked with city partners like Wheeling Heritage on installing banners downtown, a proposed Wheeling History Museum, on expanding the footprint of Independence Hall to include the new Soldiers and Sailors Monument, the relocated Soldiers and Sailors Monument, and a future outdoor amphitheater. But one project in particular has the potential to take downtown development to the next level, and that's the rehabilitation of the Wheeling-Pittsburgh Steel Building into market-rate residential apartments. This project is several years in the making, and it will require city participation if it's going to be finalized. People often ask me why I find this project so important, and so I'd like to explain a little bit today. There's a simple formula that cities across the country have followed to revitalize their aging downtowns, and that's filling vacant properties with market-rate housing. Why? Well, for one, vacant buildings amount to blight. As they deteriorate, they act as cancers on their blocks, and they bring down all area property values. Downtown Wheeling still has a number of vacant buildings that used to house either office or retail space. We lack sufficient demand for those uses right now, but there is a strong demand for market-rate housing, one that far outpaces the supply. And there's another benefit to downtown market-rate housing. It puts people with disposable income in a position where they're likely to spend that money in the restaurants, in the coffee shops, in the grocery stores, and other first-floor retail outlets in the downtown. From a city planning perspective, if you want to spur more first-floor retail downtown, it helps to build in your supply of willing customers. So consider the proposal at hand. You have arguably downtown Wheeling's most magnificent building, a 144,000 square foot, 12-story, historically significant work of elegant architecture. And for 2 years now, we've been working with a developer who specializes in turning buildings just like this one into premier housing. We knew early on this project would not happen without incentives. We successfully lobbied our legislature in 2017 to increase the state historic tax credit to be on par with our neighbors. As you may have heard, we've been negotiating with nearby property owners so that the city could build a garage to provide parking capacity needed not only for future Wheeling Pit tenants, but also for future job growth. As we gather here today, the developer of the Wheeling-Pittsburgh Steel Building is pursuing financing to move forward with that project. If the developer opts to move forward, we on City Council need to be prepared to act. We have to figure out how to make this project into a reality. There are no inexpensive options here. We understand this, as have city leaders in the past who have looked to stimulate private investment in our downtown. And we also understand that at the end of the day, whatever incentives we provide have to be fair and justifiable for the city's taxpayers. Despite whatever you may have read or heard, nothing, and I repeat, nothing in this regard has been agreed to by anyone acting on behalf of the city. Our negotiations regarding the proposed parking structure are preliminary and open to further discussion. The only thing we know for sure at this point is that without a new parking structure, there will be no Wheeling Pit lofts. Not now, and perhaps not ever. And so I implore you, please consider whatever action City Council takes here to make this project happen versus the alternative of doing nothing. We can choose to let this majestic building continue to sit empty. We can watch it deteriorate in plain sight atop our skyline. We can wait until a future city council is bombarded with calls for its demolition. And we can envision the gaping hole its demise would create where Wheeling's only skyscraper once stood. These aren't hypothetical scenarios here. We've seen this episode play out before. Inaction is a choice. Every vacant lot or parking lot in downtown Wheeling today sits where there used to be a building of lesser significance than Wheeling Pit. I want to tell you that the future is watching us. And from what I have read, decisions to sacrifice buildings of this magnitude do not age well. I think we have to act. And I implore City Council to work with me in the weeks and months ahead as we make this project a reality. As we move forward, I fully expect downtown Wheeling to continue to redefine itself. We will never see it be the retail mecca it was from the 1950s. But we should not refuse to dream about what is possible. What separates our downtown from so many retail outlets these days is its authenticity and its uniqueness. And when I think about what's possible in downtown, I think about the efforts made by the next of today's honorees to capitalize on the authenticity and uniqueness of her own business model. And I'm, of course, referring to Susan Haddad, founder and longtime owner of Later Gator in Center Market. The path towards one of Wheeling's most iconic restaurants began when Susan took a leap of faith in 2000 and purchased a 19th century saloon that had long been neglected. At the time, much of nearby Center Market consisted of empty storefronts. But Susan saw the potential for her building and for the neighborhood, and after much thought and several years of painstaking renovations, later Gator opened in 2006 and provided the Ohio Valley with something entirely new. Historic photos and a remarkable collection of Wheeling steel memorabilia decorate its walls under a restored original tin ceiling. Its menu is like anything else you'll find here. It took guts and vision and fierce determination for Susan to turn her dream into its reality. And when I looked at downtown Wheeling today, I hope there are a lot more Susan Haddads out there who are channeling their own dreams into unique and authentic answers to the questions before us. Please join me in thanking Susan Haddad for daring us to follow our own dreams. Thank you. In the time we have left, let me briefly touch on two familiar topics. Everyone's happy to hear briefly. As noted earlier, the City Council has been delivering on its commission to rehabilitate the city's 22 playgrounds. We have also been thinking of how to enhance our parks and recreational footprint. Just last week, we announced plans to proceed with the early phases of a new Gateway Park here on the east side of Wheeling Island, just south of the suspension bridge. This work will be made possible thanks to a very generous gift to the city of $150,000 by the Fitzsimmons Foundation. And we also recognize that our parks and public spaces must offer more than physical recreation. They must also offer an opportunity for us to reflect and to pay homage. Since last summer, the city has been working with John Nanny of the Marine Corps League towards the erection of a Gold Star Families Memorial Monument in the Veterans Amphitheater section of Heritage Port. This tribute to families who have lost loved ones in service to their country will enhance what is already a solemn collection of veterans memorials at that location. And that brings me to my final topic of the day, and that's our public safety. You cannot have a thriving city without ensuring its safety. I've said on this stage before, and I repeat now, that we can't afford to take our city's excellent public safety statistics for granted. Our first responders today are part of a proud tradition of excellence spanning more than a century in the city of Wheeling. And nobody embodies that commitment to service more than the last of my honorees today, as I'm talking about U.S. Army veteran and retired Wheeling Fire Chief Cliff Sliger. For 40 years, including 24 as chief, Cliff came to work at the Wheeling Fire Department to keep us safe. As chief, he was instrumental in bringing emergency medical services to the fire department. And under his leadership, the department's investigation division was launched, and the police and fire departments combined their communication systems. And after his impressive career in the department, Cliff had the crazy idea to run for city council, and the voters had the crazy idea to elect him twice, in 1996 and 2000. So Cliff, I have no doubt that our community is safer today thanks to your efforts. Please join me in thanking Cliff Sliger and his wife Sherry, his wife of more than 50 years, I would say, for their decades of service to the city of Wheeling. Thank you. And now for the words you've all been waiting for in closing. Let me address the public safety issue of the day facing the City Council. For decades, we have asked our first responders to provide first-class services while operating out of undersized or antiquated facilities, and yet they haven't blinked. It was, after all, just a few short weeks ago on one of the coldest days of the year when they showed their mettle by combating what could have been a very deadly fire at the Ziegenfelder plant in East Wheeling. In reality, our fire department has started fighting that fire before it happened. How? Improvements to the plant made. Our first responders are true heroes, without whom our lives would be much different today. The fabric of our community is well woven and strong, and our Ziegenfelder tribe is humbled and grateful for the Wheeling community. Well, like members of the Ziggy tribe, I too consider our first responders heroes. And they've not asked us for much, and none entered their professions expecting fame or fortune. But they and their chiefs have asked us to address the constraints imposed by their physical facilities. And to that end, last year, this City Council gave voters the opportunity to approve to approve a property tax levy for the construction of a new public safety building to house our police and fire headquarters in downtown Wheeling. A solid majority, almost 54% of city voters said yes to that proposal. And now in most, if not all other states, a 54% vote would mean that the project would be going forward right now. But West Virginia is a little different. Our state legislature does not trust the majority of any city's voters to approve new revenue sources for municipal investments. It requires a 60% supermajority. And that's a pretty high burden. And in my opinion, it's holding back cities across the state from making the tough decisions that they need to compete in a rapidly changing world. But for better or worse, this provision of state law is not changing anytime soon. And we can't afford to wait to solve the problems created by deficiencies we have today. We must act. We can't keep asking our first responders to give us 100% if we're not willing to meet them even halfway. Our public safety is too important. And now, you may ask, what does it mean by we have to act? I see two steps in front of us. First, we must decide on a solution. Do we move forward with the new building that 54% of the city voters supported last November? Do we instead pursue one of the alternative solutions we looked at last year? I've asked our city manager to reconsider all those various choices we looked at, and I've also asked him to look at the proposed new building proposal and see if there are ways that we can find some cost savings. I expect his recommendation in the coming weeks, and I hope it gives City Council enough information to move forward. The next step, however, is going to be the tougher one, and that's figuring out how to pay for it. Chances are that you have heard that we are considering a so-called user fee for those working within city limits. All other cities in West Virginia of comparable or larger size have already enacted user fees for services such as police and fire protection, for infrastructure, for parking facilities, or the like. Typically, such fees are assessed on a weekly basis, such that a $1 user fee amounts to $52 per hour. Per year, and not per hour. The main advantages to a user fee are twofold. It spreads the burden of paying for city services more broadly to include non-residents who work within city limits and therefore benefit from such services. And moreover, it exempts and protects our senior citizens who may be living on fixed income. Now, we on City Council understand the tough choices that lie ahead of us here. If and when we consider a user fee to finance improved facilities for our first responders, you can expect a healthy and thorough debate within this body at the council level. Every member of City Council will vote for his or her conscience. I can assure you that. This is, after all, what we signed up for. So let me end my remarks today, just as I did last year, by stating what I hope is already readily apparent, and that is, as we convene here today in February of 2019, the state of the city of Wheeling is strong, and I'm pleased to report that it's getting stronger each and every day. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Mm.